Hey, I'm Sour and I make videos with hardstyle production while pretending this doesn't hurt my actual hardstyle production, and today we are diving into episode 2 of our beginner friendly series for beginners, aka Breaking Your Love. And today we are going to focus on song structure, basics of mixing, and even drums. Let's jump right in. So in our last episode we ended with this. This is a great melody, and if you want to figure out how I made this, you should check out part 1, you naughty boy. So before we can actually start with all the fancy things, we need to figure out a basic song structure, aka arrangement. And that happens in the playlist. The playlist of FL Studio is this window you see right in front of us. And in this you can eventually build entire songs. So in the last episode I ended with explaining how the patterns work in FL Studio, and today we're actually gonna go a bit further in that. We're gonna make a new pattern. And making a new pattern is pretty easy. You just go to this pattern thing and you scroll up. And that is it. Now, if you go to the actual channel rack, you can just click on this button and you can see the channel rack. And now you can see all the MIDI we made in the last episode is just gone. If I scroll back on this to pattern 1, you can see our chords and our melody. So I'm actually going to copy the chords. So if you click on this selected thing, remember, last video, Ctrl C, go to pattern 2, Ctrl V. And now we have a separate pattern with just the chords. For making it really easy to understand what is what, I'm gonna rename all the patterns. So pattern 1 we're gonna rename, but just right clicking on pattern 1, and you're gonna go to rename a color, and you're gonna give it a name. And I'm gonna give this a name, melody. Our second pattern we are gonna call break. And what a break is, honestly, it doesn't really matter, it's like basic song structure, right? So in this case we have a melody, like a melody breakdown. And before that we want to have a bit with, like, for example, a vocal or something to just set the vibe. And that part in hardstyle we call a break. Or an intro, depending on where in the song it is. But honestly, song structure is kind of a pickle, so I made an entire video on that. If you're interested, check it out. So for our break, we want there to be a bit of a different vibe than to our melody. And you can see you can just paste and copy and move around all these things until you have something that looks nice. So I want to do the break twice, I think, and then do the melody twice, perhaps. Or maybe the melody once. Yeah, then having a build up and then having the melody twice again. So like this and like this. Yeah, I think this could be a nice structure. So it doesn't really matter where in this playlist you paste everything, like it really doesn't matter. I always tend to like to start a bit later, but that's like personal preference. Like, it honestly doesn't matter, you can always Ctrl A and move it around. So for the break we want there to be a bit of a vibe. And making a bit of a vibe is gonna force us to work with both drums and kind of mixing. So making a vibe or like an atmosphere is pretty easy. If you work in FL Studio, you can go to this plus sign, you can go to Flex, and we're gonna find some instruments that we like. You can do this in like a more organized fashion, or what I like to do is I'm gonna just leave, for example, these chords, I'm gonna paste them into Flex there, and we're gonna mute them by disabling this piano by pressing this on-off light. And now, if we just browse through different presets in there, you can hear different sounds, and sometimes you have something that kind of sparks an idea for you. Nope. Actually, honestly, not bad. Not bad at all. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go for something like, yeah. Okay, I think this is a nice one to start off with. So this right now sounds still pretty boring. So to spice it up, we can start by just shuffling around a couple of the notes we have in there. And with this, like, it's really a matter of working with rhythm and working with trying to figure out what your brain wants to hear and then trying to translate that. So I'm gonna enable the metronome so it's easier to figure out the rhythm part. So I want to do something with the bass there. And just make some space for it and move it in there. And don't worry if this doesn't sound alright, you can just play around with it or leave it be. And we can even like introduce the chord in there as well. So maybe like we're using an F there, so might as well reuse this F chord. This to me sounds already a lot more fun. In music you kind of want to play with expectation, and that can happen in a lot of different ways. And I think I want to do something like that in this. So I'm just gonna find a note that I like. And you can just try anything, right? This is a nice one. Let's just reuse this one for now, over and over. We can always move it around later though. Pretty nice. I recently learned my audience is largely male and probably alone. So let's try something targeted. Hey you! Are you tired of sample packs and sound banks that do not live up to expectation? Then get our FDA approved Serum bank for hardstyle and other music for the ridiculously low price of a medium quality crate of beer. Beer is good. This pack is filled to the brim with sounds so good you can seduce mermaids. And due to the excess time you will spend indoors with this, it is scientifically proven to reduce skin cancer risks. The pack itself with its 124 presets is so big, your cock will get massive by second-hand largitude. Get your copy before everyone else gets famous because they got it earlier. So I feel like this one adds a bit more suspense, so I'm gonna keep that in there. And remember, there are no right or wrong answers in this. You can move around this a bit. Remember, this is the inverting, so harmonically nothing changes. So you select it, and with Ctrl arrow key down. I also going to play a bit with the notes in the chords itself. You can play around by, for example, breaking and making chords while you hear them. So for example, if you remember, this G is our bass note, so I want to be careful with that one. And in this case, this is our 7th, like it used to be there. So that's like also kind of a non-moving note. However, this middle one, that's the one that makes it major or minor. If you remove it, you get a power chord. It's like the metal thingies. Ooh, this is fun, I think. So again, like I said, music is playing with suspense and expectation, right? So in this case, I have this like kind of recognizable pattern. So you can expect this same thing to happen over here. But if I leave out this last note, you kind of add a bit of suspense, right? And if you make it come back all the way at the end, it sounds really fulfilling. And in this case, we kind of already did that by moving this around. So in this case, this is the middle note, right? Like in this case, it's not just that middle note that makes this rhythm appear, but it's like an entire chord. So I think this could be a very nice way to introduce it. And while I'm theorizing the crap out of it right now, usually when I do this, and what I recommend for you to do as well, is just trying to figure out where your brain brings you and then trying to work on that. So it doesn't really matter what decision you make as long as you kind of stick with it and go all in, right? So if I do something like this, it might not be a great idea to make the vibe in this one entirely different. And for the second part, just copy paste. So like this, Ctrl C, and zooming in a bit and Ctrl V. The reason why I zoom in is because FL Studio tries to paste it at the most left full bar that it sees. So this 5, this 6, this 7, right? So if I zoom in on the 6 a bit more, so you can't see the 5 anymore, if I now do Ctrl V again, it's on the 6. And for looking for a bass, it's pretty much the same concept, right? So you're going to look for any sound, and I think it might be wise to copy in the bass in there, so you can actually hear what you're doing. And remember, like whatever you pick, you don't have to keep it per se. You can always replace it, so no decision is final. And you can look for hours finding the perfect sound, or you can just work on your song more. And I feel like working on the song more is way more productive. I want to add one more thing, and that's what we call an ARP. And ARPs come in a lot of different forms, but usually you kind of get a plucky sound, so like nothing that's like keeping a tone, just like a very short tick with a tone, and then it disappears. So let's get again Flex. You wouldn't have guessed it. And we're going to look for any plucking sound. So I can see this mobile synth plug, which is another free pack you can download for it. And you can just browse the presets again. Yeah, let's go with synth plug round. Ooh, Ooh, that sounds patriotic. And with this, we're gonna stick to the notes we can already pretty much see. With ARPs, you have two schools of thought pretty much. You have ARPs and you have drones. And an ARP, what you would usually do is you make, like, for example, a simple rhythm, right? So for example, like this. And you're gonna follow the chords. So in this case, we would go like this. And drones kind of stick to, like, whatever you made in this part, you're just gonna copy paste throughout the thing, and it doesn't really care at all about what the chords are doing. And this is another way of adding suspense. And this is why I like drones a little bit more. It depends on your vibe, of course. Like, sometimes you just want there to be an ARP to just add some, like, actual harmony in there. But honestly, I just like adding suspense. And you're gonna look for notes that, again, like, just sounds right to you. And you can go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, whatever, up, down, up, whatever. It really depends on your own personal preference and whatever works for your song. You also can make the pattern like wild, like rhythm-wise, right? You can go for something very predictable or something kind of more funky. It depends on your song. Ooh, I think this is fun. So I was gonna go for just this on repeat, right? So. And this is fine, but I kind of like thought if I make this one a bit earlier, it sounds kind of rushed in this part, but then because it's longer, it kind of relaxes again. Hell yeah. Cool. Okay, so we have a bit of a break and now we're gonna do the drums. Drums are really simple in a way, and they're also another rabbit hole to just lose your fucking mind over. In F-Studio there are a couple of ways of doing drums. So you can do them the same as we did like the chorus or whatever, so you just get any like drum plugin in there and you can play it like MIDI. Or what you can do is you can go to packs, or if you later download stuff, you can work with like actual audio fragments in the playlist. And I think for the purpose of this video, that's also way more educational because you haven't seen that yet. So FL Studio itself does offer a lot of cool samples, but it might not be up to your taste perfectly. And especially if you want to specialize in something, you do want to download your own stuff. So we're gonna go to packs, because that's the one you have right now. You're gonna browse a bunch of the drum options, because there is a lot, right? So you have this drums there, you have like drums mode audio, and even like in Legacy you have another drum thing. Why there are 3 different places for drums, I don't fucking know, but here we are. So let's just browse something and just find a combination of a couple of sounds that work. We want to go for a kick. And if you just press your arrow key down or up, you can just browse them. And by playing the arrow key to the right, you can play it on repeat. Okay, so I think I found a kick drum I like. And in this case I went with the 707 kick found in the first drum thing. And now imagine the sample you found is not what you like. You can also just like drag any other sample right over it and it will replace it, or you can just click it, or like if it's the last clicked sample, it should be fine. And then you can scroll click on whatever sample you find out there. But yeah, finding the right samples is another rabbit hole, and it's gonna take some time for you to find a couple of sounds that work for you. And the way you can work with samples is pretty easy, right? So you can shorten them by just grabbing this and shortening it. You can press Alt. With Alt it's like gets outside of the grid line, so you have way more fine control. And what you can also do is you can round off the edges. So if you look in this top corner, you see a slow fade, you have like a 0 crossing or whatever, and like another option. And if you press the slow fade thing there, you can just slightly round off stuff like this. For your drum arrangements, with hi-hats I tend to just go in between the kick and the snare. And for the kick and snare, honestly, like the kick can go wherever. You can just have the snare either on the 2nd and 4th, or on the 3rd and nothing else. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And with the kick you can do anything in between, right? So got nothing in my brain. We will demonetize. And this of course depends on the song you're making. So we're gonna arrange it, and honestly I feel like the kick can be replaced because it's like way too soft. Okay, this works. So you may have noticed that if I play everything together right now, it sounds like shit. And for this, we can actually fix it in mixing. So before we can mix anything, which happens in the mixer, which is like this fourth button, right? Before we can mix anything, we might need to send stuff to the mixer. So by sending stuff to the mixer, you can do it in a couple of ways, but what I like to do is to, like this keeps me organized, is I'm gonna select stuff in groups. So for example, all the drums at the same time. So we're gonna look for an empty track. And in this case, I want to go to 22 because it's a Taylor Swift song. Right click, channel routing, and route selected channel to this track. Now you can see this thing moves. And actually your mixer probably looks like this. And for everything else, we're gonna do it in a bulk. So we're gonna Control Shift, we're gonna select all of them, and we're gonna send all of them by channel routing, starting from this track. If you go to starting from this track, you can see it makes them named and colored, and it's all nice, neat, and colorful. Okay, so this mixer looks very confusing, probably. I'm gonna mute the break for a second. There are not a lot of knobs that you actually need to know anything about, because there's not a lot of different knobs, right? So all of these channels work in the same way. So all of these work in the same way. So you have a on-off icon, right? So if I just turn this kick off, you can see you don't hear it anymore. This is panning, so left, right, or neutral, like centered. You have your volume slider, and this is gonna be your best friend and your worst enemy. So every single channel has a lot of slots. So if I, for example, want to have a effect on the kick and not on anything else, I can just click on this kick. I can add an effect, and if you click any of the slots, you can see a list of plugins. So let's say, for example, I want to distort this. You can add a distortion, and now if you click anywhere else, you don't see the distortion except for the kick. What you want to do is you want to prevent that this meter ever goes over to 0. And there are a couple of ways to do that, but the most important one to keep in mind is you're going to level down. Playing with the volumes is called leveling, and if you level down, you prevent this from happening. So for example, if I don't hear this clap, instead of boosting it, I can just bring everything else down. So for example, this kick can be a bit less loud. And these highs, for example, can also be quite a lot less loud. And now if I enable the break, and let's send actually the break instruments to there as well. Oh wait, how can we? Because we can't see them. This channel rack has a neat feature to keep things organized, but it's also a neat feature to just hide all your shit for yourself, which is frustrating. So if you go to this audio thing, you can click on it and you can see unsorted. And if you go further, you can see like more categories in there later. Unsorted just means all your actual instruments. Audio means all your, for example, drums and vocals. Or you can go to all and then you see all. But I feel like unsorted is a bit more easy to see what the hell is going on. So this piano, in this case, we can remove in this. Because it doesn't really add anything, I think. So I'm just going to get rid of it. Ctrl X. And I'm going to send all these to the mixer. So remember, selecting with Ctrl and Shift. And we're going to look for empty channels. So let's say channel 16. Go to channel routing. Route selected channels starting from this track. Another neat trick, by the way, if you select your channels in the mixer and then press Alt and arrow key to the side, you can move them around. So if you want to keep stuff organized, don't worry about like where you leave stuff, you can always move it around. But I feel like right now was a nice time to also get into effects. Because effects are gonna be another one of your nightmares. Effects are a way to enhance, improve, or just make sure your sounds work better together. So if you see these slots and click on one of them, you can get into a lot of different categories. And yours may look different because I've downloaded a lot of stuff over the years. But you have a couple of different categories of plugins or effects. The first and most important one to understand is an EQ. And FL Studio itself offers Fruity Parametric EQ2. This is honestly a great plugin. Like, even though I have like downloaded a lot of other plugins over the time, this I still use every day. And you can see, if I open this and I play the song, you can see all this movement. And it's kind of important to know how sound works. Sound has a range from low to high. With an EQ like this, you can manipulate that. So for example, you don't want any bass in your instrument, you can just get rid of all the low end. Or the vice versa, if you want like no low, no high end at all, right? For example, you want to make it sound muffled, you can do this. And manipulating frequencies like this is a very, very versatile tool. What I recommend for you to do, like with all the effects, is just move around knobs and see what it does. Because while I can say, oh yeah, if you turn this knob down or like up or whatever, it will do X. Like, yeah, it gives you an idea of like the concept, but it doesn't give you an understanding of what it actually does. So something we can actually start off with. This plug is really cool, but I feel like it could be a lot more spacious. And for that you can add reverb or delay, or both. So I reckon we're going to start with delay. And delay, FL Studio comes with Fruity Delay 2, 3 and even Delay Bank. I like using 3 because I just have more experience with it, but you can use all of them and probably get the same or better results. Now if I press play for a second and then stop again, or if I just play a couple of notes from the plug, you can hear it ping, 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 ping. I just pressed it once, right? So click. That's what delay does. We can change the timing, so for example if we want to make it faster. And we can change it in all sorts of ways to fit our song. And in this case what we want to do is we want to turn it to ping pong. And we're gonna turn the pan to whatever side all the way. What this does is whenever you now play a note, those reflections when they come back are gonna be left, right, left, right, left, right. You can play a bit with the level to make it less annoying. Or you can turn the wet a bit down. Makes your plug sound a lot more spacious. So the other thing we can do to make it sound even better is adding reverb. And reverb is like the sound you get when you shout in a tunnel, because you're an annoying little brat. If you turn the wetness up a bit in Fruity Reverb 2, it's going to be more of the effect. If you turn the DEC or decay to a bit higher, let's say 4 seconds or whatever, you can hear there's a lot more of it. You can turn the damp up a bit to give a bit more color or depth. And you can play a lot with the other settings to kind of get a feel for what it does. So you even have like a high cut and a low cut, like in the EQ we discussed earlier. So for example, if you feel like the reverb, so let's turn the delay off for a second. Imagine you find this to be a bit too bright, so you can turn the high cut down. And now it's a lot more muffled. Or the other way around, if you want there to be like no bass in there whatsoever, you turn this one up. And it gets very shallow. And like anything else, there are no right settings to use for your song. It just depends on what you like. So again, just do weird shit and get a feeling for what every knob does. But it already sounds a lot more spacious, so let's turn everything else on and let's play this with the drums. This is fine, but it sounds a bit bland. And that's because drums and bass can play really cool in on each other. So for example, we have this clap, right, in the center of every bar, essentially. If we play around with that with the bass, for example, so let's say, go to the bass, let's say we make it stop, right there. It gets really punchy. Or if you start the bass right there, it again like adds to the vibe. Like the more you just play with stuff like this, you get a lot better feeling for rhythm. And rhythm is fucking everything when you try to make dance music like hardstyle, for example. And to keep this entire break more interesting, what you can do is just, for example, copy paste the drums to the first part as well. If you press Ctrl, Shift, and drag to the side, and just leave it there. And maybe leave these open. And for this last part, we're just gonna get rid of all the drums, except for this one kick, and that's it. A bit more on dynamics. Right now this break sounds like too much of the same. So for example, if I would make these patterns unique, so for example in this one, if I get rid of the bass, then this part would sound a bit more energetic. So what you can do is you can click on this piano icon there, go to make unique, and now it made a new pattern. You can see it right there. If you now go to this channel rack, you can go to your bass and Ctrl X, and then you have one part without the bass and one with. So our next episode is going to be making this piano part actually sound like hardstyle. Or the clinical term is sound design and layering. That's gonna be a very exciting one for a lot of you, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss that episode. If you have any video ideas, of course, you can drop them in the comments as well. And if you have any nice things, or not so nice things to say about my hair or whatever, or my appearance, also leave them there. If you want to be in a fun community for hardstyle producers and other people who should go outside more, make sure to join my Discord server and we can help each other get better at making bad music. I also have Patreon where I upload the uncut versions of these videos so you can see what my process is actually like. And of course I'll upload the FLPs or project files right there so you can download them if you so choose. With all that being said, I want to thank you so much for watching. It was a pleasure to be your host once again. Until we meet again. Did you know tomatoes are berries? It carries and varies, but it is freaking me out. I'm not sure if it's science or fairies, but I'm not in the vibe with what they are about.